right, come on now. Who's excited to be in the house of the Lord today? Make some noise, excited to be here. If you're excited, then look at the person sitting beside you and say, I'm glad you're here today. Go and tell them, say, I'm glad you're here today. And look back and say, well, I'm glad you're here too. It's always good to be with the family of God. Man, it's so good to be worshiping with you guys this morning. Also, I want to welcome at our Ashland campus and everybody watching online. And I just want to stop for a moment. Come on, can we give it for our worship team? Don't they do an amazing job every single week of just leading us? And what I love about our worship team is they don't actually like sing to us. They sing to Jesus and for Jesus and not trying to do it for us. And so it's just so good to have such an awesome worship team, just loves the Lord and wants to lead us in worship every single Sunday. Well, we're on part 3, the finale of this book of Esther. And I'm just curious, how many of you said, man, this is a kind of a crazy book, if you've been with us the last couple of weeks? Come on, it's been kind of crazy. It's a crazy book, man. I mean, God's not nowhere mentioned in the book. In fact, they almost not put the book of Esther in the Bible because it wasn't in the name of God, wasn't mentioned in the book. But God's hand's all over it. He's all behind the scene. And so today, as we finish this series, I just wonder, and maybe you're here, and I don't need to know what the situation is, but maybe you're here and you are facing an impossible situation. You are facing a wall that seems just unscalable. Like it's almost like impossible for anything to happen. And you know you have a little bit of faith, right? You have a little bit of faith that God could do something, but it doesn't look like it's gonna happen. You're almost at a point where you're about to give up and it's hopeless, and no matter what it may be. It could be something at work, it could be in your marriage, it could be with your parenting, it could be in your finance. Like there's something in your life right now, you're like, man, I'm hanging on by a thread. And God really needs to come through. And if that's you, I believe with everything within me that God brought you here this morning. I know you woke up this morning, it's your routine, you do the thing, you go to church, and maybe you haven't been here for a couple of weeks, and finally you pop in today, and you're like, hey, I'm just here in person or something, or I'm joining online, being part of it. Here's what I believe. I believe that God woke you up this morning, gave you breath this morning, and a divine appointment brought you here this morning. Now, I believe that every Sunday. Because I don't believe God does anything by accidents. I don't think God does anything as an oops. I don't think it's a coincidence, luck we talked about last week, that you would be here today. And so if that's you, hang tight. Because I really believe that God wants to do a breakthrough in your life and God wants to do something very powerful in your life. And I'm gonna believe that he wants to do that. And so as we jump back into this story, let's just kind of recap here, a quick recap as we get to finish it today. Quick recap is there's this playboy king who's stuck on himself, very conceited, degrades women, very rich, very wealthy, shows everything he has off, his palace, his gold, his everything he has. He's leading, watch this, he's over 44% of the world's population, 127 provinces size, twice the size of the United States, and he has everything, even a beautiful, hot, fine queen as a bride. And one day he's so drunk, he asked his wife to come in, the queen to come in wearing nothing but a crown. And she said, no, I'm not gonna walk in front of all your drunk buddies with just a crown on. And so he wrote a law that says Queen Vashti is never allowed back into my presence ever again. 4 years have passed, he's lonely. And one of his attendants said, hey man, I was watching YouTube the other day and I found that there's like bachelor contest. They didn't have YouTube back then for some reason. Did they have YouTube? No, they didn't, okay. And so they had this like bachelor contest and I had this great idea. Let's go find all these young, beautiful virgins all over the land. Let's bring them to you, O king. You can have a one-night stand with them, and whichever one is the most favorable in your eyes, you get to pick her to be queen. And the king's like, oh, let me pray about this. No, he didn't have to pray about it. He goes, that's a great idea. Let's go make that happen. So they go and they find all these beautiful young virgins, and they bring them to the palace, and then enters in Mordecai. Mordecai was a Jew who was brought from Babylon into Persia, and all this is happening in modern-day Iran. Just for the record, so you know, this is modern day Iran. Mordecai is now a guardian, adopted his cousin Esther. That's where she enters to the scene. She's young, she's beautiful, she's a virgin, and she's Jewish, and no one knows. No one even knew that Mordecai was a Jew. So what do? They come and they grab her and they snatched her from Mordecai from the home against her will, and he's like, listen, don't tell anybody you're a Jew. So she goes and she finds favor with all the king's handmaids that got her nice. And for 6 months, they got like a medi-pedi, her hair all did, P90X, everything on the scene. She's getting ready for the moment. And 12 months again, the Pappers did all this beautiful beautification process. It took her 12 months to get ready. Ladies, how long does it take you to get ready? You know what I'm saying? Like it took her 12 months to get ready. Watch this, for a one-night stand with the king. Now, the book of Esther is not given to us for like morals. You know what I'm saying? It's not like this is how you should morally act. But it took her 12 months to get ready for a one-night stand with the king. She has a one-night stand with the king, does not tell that she's a Jew, and the king picks her. Out of all these young virgins, the king picks her. And we know on this side of the story, it's because God is in control, God is sovereign, God had a plan, yada, 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 yada. It's easy to read that on this side of the story. But they didn't know that. The king didn't know that. And Esther didn't know that. And the only place I can find in the Bible, in this book, the reason why I believe that the king picked her is because one little passage that says this: she did not ask anything or request anything from the king. See, the king said in the one-night stand, ladies, whatever you want. Thank you for spending the night with me. I'll give you whatever you want. And they wanted gold, they wanted dress, they wanted all this jewelry, all this stuff. Great, good, I'll give it to you. But Esther didn't ask for anything. And I just wonder if the king thought, man, this girl ain't a gold digger. Man, she don't want nothing from me. And so for that reason, I want this girl to be my queen. She could have anything. She didn't want anything. That's amazing. And so guess what? She wins. She wins the contest. And now nobody knows, but this Jewish girl is now the queen of Persia, modern day Iran, a massive of 44% of the world's population. She is now the queen. Well, Mordecai, her cousin, works at the king's gate, and he overhears a plot of assassination about Bigthana and Teresh is going to take out the king. And so he goes and said, Esther, I just want you to know these two guys are going to kill your husband. You might want to tell the king. So she goes, tells the king. The king comes and finds out and says, oh my gosh, you're exactly right. Takes those guys, kills those guys, and says, Mordecai, you're the man, thank you so much. And he writes in his personal journal, today Mordecai saves the king. And that's very important because that come back into last week, if you notice how important that was. So he saved the king. And now some time has passed. Satan enters into the scene through a guy named Haman. They weren't possessed by Satan, but he had the spirit of Satan on him. And so Haman comes into the scene, and all of a sudden the king elevates this wicked man to be the vice president of Persia. And everywhere he goes, people would fall down and bow down to him. He's coming out the king gates one day, and Mordecai, the Jew, whose cousin is now the queen, stands there, and Haman walks by, and he would not bow down. He said, I ain't gonna bow down to this guy. And every day he passed by, and Mordecai would not bow down. And this made Haman so mad. And so the guys went to Mordecai and said, hey, bro, what's you bowing down? Here comes Haman. Why don't you bow down in front of him? He goes, I'm not gonna bow down, I'm a Jew. Now, he went like this Orthodox practicing Jew, but here's what he means by that. To bow down is an act of worship, and Jews don't worship man. So I'm not gonna worship him. I worship the one true God, and I'm not gonna bow. Well, Haman finds out that he's Jew, and Haman gets so upset, he gets so mad, and he goes, it's not enough just to kill Mordecai. I wanna kill every single Jew, and I'm gonna annihilate every single Jew in all the 127 provinces. And listen, Satan has been trying to do this from day one. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, we find the first gospel ever mentioned. And God said this to Eve, someday from your seed is gonna come someone who's gonna destroy the enemy, Jesus. And the enemy knows that. So we see this with Pharaoh, we see this with Haman, we see this, that watch this, Satan wants to destroy the Jews. If Satan can destroy all the Jews, then watch this, the bloodline is cut off, and then the promise cannot be filled, and Jesus cannot be born. But guess what happened? Jesus was born. He lived a sinless life. He died. He got up out of the grave. And now, when the devil thought he had him down, he's alive. And so now today, the devil's like, if I can kill all the Jews, then God won't fulfill his covenant and come back and save his people. Have you ever wondered every single time you turn on the news, every single time over this little tiny country in the Middle East called Israel, all this uproar? Why? Why all of the Jews? Why is this so important? Why is the world more anti-Semitic now than it's ever has been? Why is everybody turning against the Jews? Because it is Satanism. Satan wants to destroy the Jews, wipe them off the face of the planet, because if he can annihilate the Jews, listen, he's been trying to do this from day one. And if he can use Haman to do it, the most powerful person almost in Persia, he's gonna do it. And so Haman takes these dice called pour. That's very important. We'll come back. He takes these dice. He rolls the dice. Let's see what numbers they lie on. And there it is. On March the 7th, next year, a year from today, every single Jew is going to be annihilated. So he goes to the king and says, King, these people, they're weird, they're strange, they're a threat to you. We should take them out and kill them. And the king says, do whatever you want. And so Haman writes a decree, takes the king's signature ring and signifies it. And watch this is very important. Because when he puts the ring on the decree, it can never be revoked. It's irrevocable. And so he puts it on and he sends it out, and all of a sudden, on March the 7th next year, you can kill all the Jews. And listen, kill the Jews, kill their husband, kill the wife, kill their kids, and then you can take all their possessions. If they got a checking account, take their checking account. Take their camels, take their house. You got the deed to their farm, their property, whatever you want, it's yours. Mordecai finds out about it. Mordecai gets words to Esther and say, bro, come here, honey, listen. Guess what's gonna happen? Next March, all the Jews are gonna be killed. You need to go talk to your husband. She goes, I can't go beg my husband because he's not asked me to come in. If I go before the king and he don't ask me, he'll kill me. And he goes, listen, don't you think that once they find out that you're a Jew with the king's edict, they're going to kill you? Maybe, perhaps, this is what was last week, perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this, to save your people. And she makes the famous statement, if I perish, I perish. Let's go. And so she goes and she has this banquet before Haman, and she has the banquet for the king, and she goes, King, listen, here's the problem. People are going to try to kill me and my people. I need some help. Will you come to my rescue? And the king says, whatever you want, I will do for you. And he goes, who in the world would kill the queen? She said, this wicked man Haman, your right-hand man, your boy, has wrote this decree, tricked you, and now all the Jews are going to be slaughtered next March. And the king was so furious that he killed Haman. He killed him on a pole, and all of a sudden everyone rejoiced because it was done, and all this was great and grand. Haman's gone, everything's good, right? Wrong. Now we pick up in chapter 8. That was just the introduction. Y'all ready for the sermon part? Y'all ready for that part? That's just all introduction. That's just catch you up for the last 2 weeks. And now the suspense. What's going to happen? Here's the problem. 3 months have passed in the decree, and 9 months from this moment, when Haman is killed, all the Jews are to be annihilated. So what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? Well, we pick up in chapter 8, and it says in verse 1 and 2, it says, at that point, all Haman's property was given to the queen, and the queen went to the king and said, hey, sorry, I'm Jew. I just, surprise, you married me and I'm Jewish. And remember Mordecai that kind of saved you from Big Thana and T-Resh who works at your gate? Yeah, that's my cousin who's actually my daddy who's been raising me. He adopted me because I was an orphan. Meet Mordecai. Ta-da! And she introduces Mordecai to the king. And the king puts a robe on him, puts a crown on him, makes him the vice president. You see a reversal. What was Haman is now Mordecai's. And then Queen Esther falls at the king's feet. He extends the golden scepter and said, what is it? She says, all my people are going to die, and it's going to take place. What are you going to do about this? And look what the king reply was in verse 7. Then the king Xerxes said to the queen and to the Mordecai the Jew, I've given Esther the property of Haman. He's been impaled on a pole, so he's dead because he wanted to destroy the Jews. Now go ahead and send message to the Jews in the king's name, telling them whatever you want, seal it with the king's signet ring, but remember that what has already been written in the king's name and sealed with his signet ring can never be revoked. So what he did with Haman, he now does with Mordecai. He gives him the ring, and Mordecai dictates a decree to all the Jews on March the 7th of next year. If anyone attacks you, you can kill them, destroy them, their entire family, and you can take all their plunder. Because that's exactly what Haman said. That's very important. We'll come back to that. And he took the king's ring, and he stamped it. And now we have 2 decrees that has been out in public. And now all of a sudden it goes to all the cities. Look at verse 11. Then the king's decree gave the Jews in every city the authority to unite to defend their lives. They were allowed to kill, slaughter, annihilate anyone in nationality or province who might attack them or their children or their wives and take the property of their enemies. The day that was chosen for this event and through all the providence of King Xerxes was March the 7th of next year. Now this is like now it's like game on, right? So imagine this, you're a Jew, you get a letter in the mail from the king. On March 7th next year, you're going to be destroyed. You and all your people. 3 months later, you get a letter. Psych, let's do reverse. You can actually fight for your life, and if they attack you, you can kill them, and you can take all their plunder. And so it's like in my mind, I know you got to pray for me, but in my mind, I got 9 months. It's like Rocky, you know what I'm saying? You got to get in battle for it. And so they're outside, they're taking like the donkey wagon. They're like doing like some curls. They're getting ready for it. They're taking their pitchforks. They're trying to put the kids on the side and bench. Like, it's like game on. So if you're like MMA fighting, WWF, like it is like March 7, March Madness. This is it right here. It's going to go down. We're going to throw down in 9 months. So all the Jews now are getting ready, preparing for the battle that's about to take place. Watch this, in all the province of 127 places. And so the word goes out, everything goes out, everyone's ready to take this. And this is what's so fascinating. Look what happens in verse 17, chapter 8. In every province city where the king decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced and had great celebration and declared a public festival and holiday. Every time something happens to the Jews, they make a holiday out of it. And many of the people, well, watch this. Many of the people in the land became Jews themselves. Is that not fact? They became Jews themselves, for they feared that the Jews might do to them. They're like, man, listen, I heard about their God. I heard about how they did with Egypt and Pharaoh and how they split the Red Sea. I've heard about how God's delivered his people, and I know they're living out of Israel and they're right here today, but I've heard about their God, and they said, I'm going to convert to Judaism. So now all these, watch these, Persians now are converting to Judaism because they fear the Jews, because they know how powerful they are. And then here it is, chapter 9, verse 1. We pick right up this. Here it is. So on March the 7th, we're there. It's battle royal right here. Here it comes. March 7th, 2 decrees of the king were put into effect. And on that day, the enemy of the Jews had hoped to overpower them. But quite the opposite happened. The Jews overpowered their enemies. And the Jews began to whip anybody that attacked them, that came across them. Even the nobles, it tells us in verse 2 and 3, the governors, the royal officials, all of these people began to help the Jews. And Mordecai was promoted and his fame went everywhere. And in verse 5 through 16, chapter 9, it says they went out and they destroyed all the people and they killed the 10 sons of Haman. Now remember Haman? Very wealthy, bragged about it. Probably one of the second wealthiest people in all the land. They killed his 10 sons. And the decree said, now watch this, that if whoever you kill, you can take all their riches, all their wealth, all their livestock, all the deeds to their property, you can take all their plunder. So they killed the 10 sons, come up against the Jews, and they killed the 10 sons of Haman. Then verse 10 says, but they did not take any plunder. Now, if I'm reading this story, so if we just do a Bible study right now, if I'm reading that story, I'm going, why didn't they take it? Mordecai said, once you take them out, all their gold, all their silver, their checking account, 401k, all their lives, all that's yours. Why in the world would they not take their plunder? So it makes me want to scratch my head going, I don't understand that. And so the Queen Esther went, the king called into Queen Esther and said, all these people have died. Anything else you want me to do? And she goes, yeah, I got one more request. Extend it. Have you ever heard in sports, run up the score? Raise your hand if you heard that before, run up the score. Don't you know, so you're watching a game or something and the score is like, you know who's going to win. They've already up by like 30 points, but the coach keeps running up the score. He just keeps like the A team in, and the A team just keeps running the score up, and then half the people are mad, and half the people are like, that's right, you deserve it. Like they run up the score, so you really can't make anybody happy there. Esther goes to the king and says, yo, king, I want to run up the score. Extend it. Give us one more day of battle. Let us keep fighting to tomorrow and knock out all of this, because here's what I want to do tomorrow. Tomorrow, I want to wake up and I want to have the 10 sons of Haman, their bodies, to be impaled on a stick. And then I want to put the stick in the city capital. And I want people, when they walk by, see the 10 sons of Haman on the stick so that they know not to mess with the Jews. We're going to run up the score. Is that okay with you, king? King says, do whatever you want to do. And that very next day, they took the 10 sons of Haman, they put them on poles, they hung them up so people walk by and say, that's what's going to happen if you mess with the Jews. And 75,000 more people were slaughtered, killed that day. But it says right here, when you see in verse 15, it says again, they did not take any plunder. Verse 16 says 75,000 more people were killed, but they did not take any plunder. Okay, time out real quick. If you're a Bible student and you love to study your Bible, and you're reading a paragraph or a passage, and the word is used twice, if it's used thrice, 3 times, something's up here, especially in the same chapter. So whoever wrote the book of Esther, which we don't know, there's theories about who actually penned it, but whoever wrote the book of Esther wanted the reader to know that the Jews did not take, they said it 3 times in a few passages, they did not take any plunder. And so now as a Bible student, you scratch your head going, why didn't they take the plunder? Because the decree said they could take all their gold, they would have become instant millionaires at that very moment. Just go take all the people's gold and silver. But they did not touch the plunder. So I want to research that. Why did they not touch it? Well, we know about Haman. Haman was what? An Agagite from King Agag. So you're sitting there going, let's trace the Agagites' genealogy. Let's go back and see what happened, who were Amalekites. The Jews would have known this. And when the word got out in the 9 months of preparation, remember Haman who tried to destroy the Jews? You know who his descendant was? He came from King Agag. Well, you remember what happened with the King Agag? No, I don't remember what happened. Tell me the story what happened. Well, in 1 Samuel chapter 15, the Israelites complain and says, we want a king, a human king. And God says, I am the king of Israel. There's no other greater king. I know you're king, but all these other countries have their own human kings. We want a human king to lead us. And God says, you want a king? You think you want a king to lead you? Okay. And he goes to Samuel, tells Samuel, and he anoints King Saul. Remember who comes after King Saul? King David. King Saul. King Saul is now the king, the leader of Israel. God gives him a command. What command, God? I want you to go and destroy King Agag and all the Amalekites. I want you to wipe them off the face of the planet. Why? Because you don't know, because God knows everything, that from his line is going to be a descendant from a guy named Haman, and Haman someday is going to come and want to annihilate my people. So let's just go ahead and deal with the problem now, and I want you to wipe them off the face of the planet. But King Saul disobeyed God, and what we see happening in the book of Esther is because what King Saul did not do when God told him to do it. If you look here with me on the screen, 1 Samuel, it says right here in chapter 15, verse 8, it says King Saul, he captured King Agag, the Amalekite king, but he completely destroyed everyone else. Saul and his men spared the king's life, kept the best sheep, God told them not to keep anything, but they kept the plunder. They kept the best sheep, the best goats, the best cattle, the fat calves, all the baby lambs, everything. In fact, it appealed to them. It looked good to them, so they kept it. They destroyed what was worthless of poor quality. And then the Lord said to Samuel, I am so sorry that I ever made Saul to be king. For he has not been loyal to me and has refused to obey all my commands. And I believe, I can't prove this, here's my suggestion, is in that 9 months preparation, those Orthodox Jews who did all this research and knows their history and their ancestry, they knew that something took place. Haman, the Agagite, it tells us all the way through the book of Esther who his generation came from, traces all the way back. If King Saul would just have listened and didn't touch the plunder, and did everything God told him to do, then we would not be in this predicament that we're in. And so the author of Esther wants us to know this. The Jews did not take the plunder. The Jews, again, did not take the plunder. And for the record, one more time, in case you didn't hear, he said in verse 16, the Jews did not take the plunder. And I believe that's a direct reflect all the way back against what King Saul defied God and disobeyed him. And that's what they decided we're not going to do. And we see the rest of the story, what takes place. Mordecai and Queen Esther's in this festival called Purim. Why they call it Purim? Remember the dice that Haman rolled? They were called Pur. So they created a day. Let's mock Haman. Let's call the holiday Purim. And on March 23rd this year, they're going to celebrate Purim. They've celebrated Purim every single year for thousands of years, ever since this incident, to remind their people. So on March 23rd, in all of Israel, someone will stand up and they'll read the book of Esther. Hey, everybody gather around. And listen, you could go watch it. And when they get to Haman, everybody goes, boo, they boo Haman. And they mention Esther, everybody cheers for Esther. And they celebrate for one day how Esther rescued her people. And they were not annihilated. It's going to happen this year on March 23rd. And then chapter 10 takes place. Few verses, and it's all about Mordecai. How great Mordecai was and the fame and how it passed down for generations and generations. But the book is not named after Mordecai. It's named after Esther. And you're sitting here today and you go, cool, kind of crazy Bible study, but what does that got to do with me? How in the world can this ancient story about this drunken king, Jewish queen, battle royale takes place on March the 7th, victorious Jew. How does that got to do anything with me? See, all through this book, you'll see divine reversals. Queen Vashti, now it's reverse Queen Esther. Haman is vice president, reversal, Mordecai's vice president. Haman made a pole to kill Mordecai on. Haman is killed on the pole that he made himself. The crown was given to Haman, now the crown's given to Mordecai. The whole book of Esther is about reversals. if you parallel them and separate them side by side, you can see how everything got reversed. Like the curse was reversed all the way through it. And you may say, well, what is that? Are you facing an unscalable wall? Are you in a situation right now that seems impossible to you? I believe God brought you here this morning to encourage you to believe and to be reminded that He is a God of divine reversals. That He is a God, as you just sung, who could turn it around. And if He could turn it around for them, He can turn it around for you. So maybe you need a divine reversal this morning. Maybe your illness has taken a toll on your body. Maybe your sorrow has now been replaced because you have no more joy. Maybe you serve a self-centered jerk at work and your workplace is not how it used to be and you need a reversal. Maybe the person you married is not the person you married because they've changed. They're different now than how they used to be. Maybe you don't see how things can turn around. In fact, maybe you are disappointed over and over and over and you feel so hopeless. And here's what I know about hopelessness. I know from my own experience. Hopelessness will drain and squeeze the life out of you. And we can see all through Scripture that God is a God of divine reversals. We go all the way back from the beginning. Remember Abraham and Sarah was so old she couldn't have babies and she wanted to have a baby, wanted to be a mom. And one night she goes to sleep. And one day she's not pregnant and then a divine reversal takes place and the next day she is pregnant even though she's old, up in her age. Remember Joseph? He wakes up one morning in a prison cell in Egypt and then divine reversal takes place and by that evening, that night, he becomes vice president of Egypt. That God did a divine reversal. You remember when Moses was walking and he got to an uncrossable Red Sea and then a divine reversal took place and the sea was split and they walked across on dry ground? You remember Joshua who walked around the walls of Jericho and there's no way they can get in. It's impossible to scale the walls. We can't make it happen. And on the 6th time there was a moment, but on the 7th, God did a divine reversal and the walls came tumbling down. Do you remember the story of Goliath standing and defying the Israelites for 40 nights and for 40 days? And then God did a reversal and a little teenage boy named David came up and he killed Goliath. You remember the moment when Daniel was thrown into a lion's pit and the lions at one moment was hungry and they wanted to eat Daniel, but then God did a divine reversal and He shut the mouths of the lions. You see, the Bible is full of divine reversals. And then the greatest, Jesus of Nazareth, born of a virgin, lived a sinless, perfect life, died a criminal's death, no heartbeat, no pulse, placed in a borrowed tomb. But then on the 3rd day, his heart began to beat again. His eyes began to flutter again. His nail scar's hand was living. And the greatest divine reversal in all of history took place. Right in front of us. And God is a God who could turn it around. Oh, death, where's your victory? Oh, death, where's your sting? God can turn it around. He's performed the greatest turnaround ever. And if God can resurrect His Son from the dead, He can resurrect any problem you're facing from the dead. Do you believe that? And it's one thing to say that, and then my own personal divine reversal. And if you put your life and faith in Jesus, you know what I'm talking about. As a junior in college, I hit my knees in my dorm room and I begged out to God. And I went down alienated from God, a foreigner, far from God. I went down dead in my sin. But then God did something in my heart, and when I stood back up, a divine reversal took place. I was once lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I can see. My name has been written in the Lamb's Book of Life. The personal divine reversal. And what I believe more than anything else is so many people who are Christians or claim to be Christians have gotten over your divine reversal. You've forgotten what Jesus did for you. You forgot what it was like before when you were lost in your sin. And my prayer is that God would rekindle that passion, as David said, God, restore the joy of my salvation, because so many believers have gotten over it. God is a God of divine reversals, and He can turn anything around. And whoever penned the book of Esther, and though God's name is not mentioned in the book of Esther, praise be to God, they put it in the Bible. Why? To encourage you that even though you can't see God's hand, you can trust His heart. His providential hand is always behind the scene, watch this, waiting to turn it around. turn it around. And the problem is that your problem is not so big. The problem is we just think God is so small that he cannot fix it. So, the next time you feel the weight of the world upon you, stop for a moment and speak to the one who created the world and has the whole world in his hands. I'm going to ask you just for a moment if you bow your heads. Two invitations. Here's the first one. I beg you to give your life to Jesus and experience the greatest divine reversal you could ever experience in your life, and that is what is becoming adopted into the family of God. If I could save you, I would have done it. But I can't even save myself. And maybe the Lord woke you up, gave you breath, brought you here this morning, watch this, so you can encounter him and you can have a divine reversal in your life. Right where you sit, you can cry out to him and you can say, Jesus, I believe. How do I get that divine reversal? He tells us, confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So right now, where you sit, you can cry out to the Lord and say, I believe. I believe you came for me. I believe you died for me. And I believe you got up out of the grave for me. And as best as I know how, I repent of my sin. And I put all my faith and trust in you. Here's the second invitation. Some of you right now, you need a divine reversal in your circumstance. You need God to turn it around. And I have no idea what that is for you. But here's what I want to do for you. I want to pray over you and beg God to turn it around. And so if you're here at any of our campuses or you're watching this online and you need a divine reversal in your life, you need God to turn it around, I'm going to ask you to do something pretty bold. I want you to stand up so I can pray over you. So if you need a divine reversal, would you stand up? I don't even need to know what it is. God already knows. There's an illness. There's a relationship. There's an addiction. There's a problem at work. There's something. I don't even know. I don't even need to know. But you need God to do a divine reversal in your life. Hey, God, I need you to turn it around. And by you standing, that is a step of faith to acknowledge that I need King Jesus to turn it around in my life. And so I'm going to pray over you, and then I'm going to ask our worship team to come back out. And here's what I want to do. I want us to sing, just for a moment, that song one more time. And now, what becomes a prayer becomes an act of worship as we beg God to turn it around. And if you're sitting down, it's okay. Would you do me a favor? Or not even me. Will you do the people around you a favor? Would you beg God that he would perform a divine reversal in your church family who's standing up? That God, would you turn it around in their life? Would you just pray for them? Oh God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, you are a covenant-keeping God. You are a God of divine reversals. You are the only one who can turn it around. You're the only one who can heal marriages. You're the only one who can bring prodigals home. You're the only one who can break addictions. You're the only one who can fix the circumstances. And God, if you don't turn the circumstance around, turn us around. Do a work in our heart. do a work in our life. And Father, I pray right now with every fiber of my being, I beg you, God, whatever situation that my brothers and sisters are facing, would you turn it around? God, you said if we just have faith the size of a mustard seed, we don't have to have a lot of faith, just a little, that God, you would do it. God, I pray that the step of standing up is the small seed of faith. As we posture our hearts before you, begging you, oh God, to turn it around. God, who's ever ill and they need a touch in their body, God, turn it around. Whatever needs to be touched in the marriage, oh God, turn it around. God, what needs to be touched in their family, God, turn it at work, turn around their relationship, their emotions of depression or anxiety, God, turn it around. And God, we know that gratitude is thanking you after the fact. But faith is thanking you before it ever happens. And so God, right now we believe and declare in your name and thank you in advance that God, you're going to turn around every single circumstance, every situation. A divine reversal is in the day in front of us. We believe it. We know you can. We believe you will. But even if you don't, you are worthy of our praise. And we'll give you all the glory and all the praise. For it's in Jesus' name we ask. Come on, and everybody said, amen. Come on, let's stand and sing.